Hey everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I am your host and lead beat writer for NC State on SI, Tucker Sennett, and I am joined once again by my good friend and assistant beat writer, Mr. Daniel Rios, back to continue our preview series of this week two matchup between Virginia and NC State on the gridiron. Some exciting stuff coming between Dave Dorn and Tony Elliott, two guys who have been around the ACC for a very long time. Before we get started, though, Dan, what are you excited for in this game overall before we kind of talk about Virginia specifically?
Yeah, I'm just excited for this offensive line. Another week to kind of grow and kind of build off of last week. Last week had some highs, certainly had a lot of lows, but I'm really excited to see how Kurt Roper and that staff is able to kind of get them going for a different look in Virginia, see if they can get a little bit of a cleaner game going and string those performances together. Just going to be key.
So what it's all about, just put stacking building
Yep.
blocks, building that Lego, you know?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
that's the name of the game in football, as they say. Building the football Lego. I just made that up on the fly.
Wow. Good
So
job. That was great.
put that in your book, Bill
Ah.
Belichick, next time.
Oh,
They're gonna write
man.
a novel about my football takes.
Oh, they will. And I'll purchase it. I'll be the first one there. Don't
Good,
worry.
good. Remember, build your Lego. That's my Mike Leach tribute of the day. Swing your sword,
Yeah,
be the
Bill.
pirate.
Maybe Bill
Anyway,
would have scored more than 20 points if he built his Lego. So,
yeah, it's true. It's true. We are not here to discuss the North Carolina Tar Heels. We're here to discuss NC State, but we're actually here to discuss their opponent in week two, the Virginia Cavaliers, also known as the Hoos, as we discussed on the last episode. And specifically, we're going to talk about their offense today. We talked about their defense yesterday. Some interesting players, not super clear on how talented that unit is. Their offense certainly poses some challenges, at least in certain areas. And I think we'll get into that. We'll do this the same way that we handled the defense and talk about the specific players that NC State's defense is going to look out for. And Dave Doran said it, the defensive players that we've talked to at the media availability throughout the week have said it. This offense starts and ends with the quarterback, and that is Chandler Morris, the transfer from North Texas. Started his career a long time ago at Oklahoma, played for TCU. I believe he was the replacement in the first year after they made the national championship run, and he got beat up in that game against Colorado the year after. That was not good. Ended up at North Texas for a year where he put up some pretty quality numbers, and now he is with Virginia and Coach Tony Elliott trying to squeeze that one last year of eligibility out and finish strong with his collegiate career. Did get dinged up in their opening game against Coastal. Took a shot on a big run. I believe it was like a 40-yard run or something, or it was long, and he went for the end zone, got absolutely throttled by a Coastal defender and left the game. That was early in the third quarter. He's going to play from everything we've heard. He's been practicing, looks fine, but certainly something to watch if this NC State defensive line is able to get after it the same way that they were in that week one game against ECU. But Morris was really, really good when he was on the field, at least statistically. And I'll sort of poke holes in those stats in a second, but he completed 19 of his 27 attempts for 264 yards and two touchdowns. Dan, what stuck out to you about his performance in terms of the good things?
Yeah, I mean he's not scared to let the ball, he's really not scared of any coverage, is what I've kind of got off of him.
No.
I don't want to get to the negatives yet, but there's a lot of just fearlessness in him as a quarterback,
Yes.
especially when the ball is in his hands. Like you mentioned, he took a big shot as well. But I mean, that's just kind of been his career. I mean, His dad coaches currently, Chad Morris. He was the head coach of SMU in Arkansas. He's currently with Texas State right now. So he understands defenses. He's grown up around this environment.
Yeah.
So he knows what he should be seeing on the field with certain coverages and things like that. And he does. He has a really good knack for kind of, I think, getting the ball out quick when he knows what's there. The problem is he doesn't always know what's there, and he does get a little um a little slower when he doesn't there's disguises and things like that. But yeah, when he's kept clean, he'll really, dice you up. But he had three turnover worthy plays in the first week, which you don't really want to see in your first week. You want to keep that number as low as possible. So a 13% turnover worthy play rate is not a good way to start the year.
Yeah, I think Brian Nelson the second talked about it being his former teammate at the media availability on Wednesday, and somebody asks, he's a guy who threw the ball 510 times last year at North Texas. He was letting it fly, and Nelson saw a lot of those passes in practice, so he kind of knows
Oh,
what it looks like, and
yeah.
he's a player that in our experience talking to him so far keeps things pretty tight, plays things close to the chest. But you could tell he had a little grin about this matchup, and I feel like the corner quarterback matchup is one where these crossover matchups often you don't actually get that head to head, but the corner versus the quarterback is definitely one where you get to see that unfold on the field right then and there, which is I think is cool. It's fun.
Yeah.
As for kind of the negatives with Morris, you already covered the turnover stuff. There was one throw that I saw on the highlight tape that I'm
Yeah.
shocked that it wasn't intercepted, but that's you take those risks with college quarterbacks. They're a little bit more turnover happy than the pros. It's can you capitalize on those mistakes? And I think NC State secondary, well, I know NC State secondary is much better than Coastal Carolina based on this next point that I'm gonna have. The Coastal defense missed so many tackles in this game. And that really helped our next kind of player that we're going to talk about, wide receiver Cam Ross, who had 7 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown. That helped him get free big time. And he just feasted on yards after catch in this game from what I watched. He was really tough to bring down, and credit to him for being skilled and having the ability to weave through the defense. But I think NC State will make it a major point of emphasis to at least try to take him out of the game the best that it can. In this matchup, but he might be that good. I don't know, but just based off of the way that Coastal secondary looked in that opener, I was not impressed, and I think they Morris was under some pressure. He didn't look great when he was under pressure. He can use his legs. He ran 5 times for 50 yards and then got hurt, but do you want him taking shots like that and risking injury? Because their backup quarterback came in and he went 3 of 9, which is not great. Um,
Yeah.
and the other risk you take is he's a gambler, and he had a couple passes like into double coverage and triple coverage where some of them were completions and you get away with it, but it's just he's a gambler. It's that simple. And Cam Ross, I think probably covers up some of those deficiencies. What are your thoughts on his performance?
Yeah, just for everyone's information, Coastal missed 14 tackles against Virginia.
Oh,
If you think that's bad, North Carolina missed 19 on Monday, but we're not
oh,
going to talk about that. Yeah, the thing with these yak type of receivers, and for a guy like Cam Ross, he is that kind of that smaller kind of, that smaller type of receiver. And how many of those yards are coming after the catch? 81 of his 124 came after the catch. And with when you're kind of looking at guys like those, is it can you beat press coverage? Can you get off the ball when you absolutely have to? Because offenses know how to get those guys the ball in space and let them work. But when you have a guy like Devin Marshall or Brian Nelson right up in your grill, can you get off that press? I didn't see it too much against Coastal, and Coastal didn't really press because honestly, I don't think they kind of like had the confidence
No.
to. Um, but it's going to be interesting to see if DJ Elliott maybe kind of has some more single high coverages and kind of trusts his corners out against these receivers. And then if it doesn't work early, you may see him go back to like a two high shells and things like that. But I think in terms of this offense, you kind of hit it a little bit. The Coastal team doesn't have as much talent, and this defensive line it's another prime opportunity for the Wolfpack's defense to stack another impressive defensive line performance, front seven performance as a whole. If you're able to make East Carolina, kind of look like they did in the run game, Virginia did struggle against Coastal Carolina in the run game. They didn't rush for much, but their success rate actually wasn't bad. It was 53.5% while one rushing the ball, which is 20th in the nation. So maybe it's just they just weren't able to, find that consistency, but they were able to, their success rate was fine. So we're gonna find out what's the deal with that this weekend. But yeah, Cam Ross is a guy that I'm really intrigued by. I'm really intrigued to see if it's all just bad play that he's, got against so far in his career. Because if he come from JMU, don't want to knock on JMU, but not the best of competition there. But I'm really excited to see him go against the secondary. So
Yeah.
hopefully Morris doesn't, throw three picks that just look terrible.
It should be interesting. This rushing attack, if you take Morris out of the fold, they still had 129 yards, but kind of not super efficient. He averaged 10, I mean, five carries for 50 yards. He averaged 10 yards per carry, but he sort of makes the team rushing average a little bit lopsided at a
Yeah.
3.8. And if you take him out, I'm not good enough at math, but that I feel like that number drops pretty significantly. These guys, Noah Vaughn, 4.5 yards per carry, Jamari Taylor, 3.2, Xavier Brown, 3.5, then you go 2.6, 2, 2, and 0 on their rushers. And I think, you know, it was a similar stat line to what NC State did, where it was kind of an inefficient running game, but they still, punched it in a couple times on the ground, figured some things out. But how do you think NC State will try to take away their running game, given how well they were able to take it away against ECU?
Yeah. See, the weird thing about it is Taylor and Vaughn are basically the same size. Typically, when you see like two different backs, it's, one's bigger, one's like smaller and quicker.
Yeah.
They're both around 5'9", like 200 pounds. So not the biggest backs in the world. Maybe we'll have to kind of see how they look against this defense. But naturally, I mean, Vaughn looked like he had the better performance. He had 36 yards after contact. You already said 4.5 yards a carry. So this guy looks like he can, break those tackles. I don't think NC State really has to change much. Their multiple front worked really well. I mean, if Harsh, Sloan, and honestly, every single defensive tackle can have the same game that they did in the first game, then I don't think there should be a worry. NC State linebackers did a really good job of filling the run against East Carolina. Not so much in pass coverage, but that's a different story. But yeah, I think just if you're able to you just can't become one-dimensional against this NC State defense because we all hear the thing if you can't run the ball and then you just let these pass rushers get after it, the way that Harsh and Sloan have looked in just 1 week of action, I don't want that kind of
Yeah.
rushing my quarterback with, the known notion of you have to pass. So I think that DJ just keeps it simple. Just keep it simple. Stay what you've been doing. There's no need to be innovative, in my opinion, against a team like this
Yeah, and
elite.
based on the way he was talking today, I don't see them changing much. I think there was more of an emphasis for sure on down and distance this week. They want to kind of clean up some of their percentages, which he talked about on third and medium. That's sort of the down that they're trying to fix right now. They their goal is to have you in third and long, so that they can tee off on you with those pass rushers. And I think if Virginia can't run the ball, there could be some serious risk of those guys that you mentioned just going to town on this offense. And I think you summarized it perfectly. The way these guys played against Coastal, just in looking at the stats and the way the game flowed, this is an offense that could very easily become one-dimensional. However, they have some playmakers. They have a quarterback who is not afraid to, take some risks and gamble, and that can be dangerous. I
Yeah.
don't Caden Hauser did not do that. He's a guy who played very much within ECU's offensive system with those RPOs and those quick out routes that sort of carved NC State up in the second half. Morse can he can work off script, and he showed that in this game. So it'll be interesting to see NC State face a quarterback like that because they're going to have more quarterbacks like that throughout the season, who like to do their own thing.
I think one thing that's also interesting is I saw a lot more trips sets out of Virginia and just the highlight tape that I was able to watch. And East Carolina really didn't do that too much. You saw more of those, those
They,
spread the
yeah.
spread. And NC State's response to when ECU would go on the trips, they would have a five-man box.
Okay.
So I think that's something to kind of pay attention to, just to see if maybe that's how Virginia gets the run game going against this defense, is testing that, just those five men in the box. And
Hmm.
every time ECU tried to do that against NC State, like I said, the defensive line was just on one and they just weren't having it. So obviously it's hard to just sustain that throughout a season, unless you're, like the best defense of all time. So, and respectfully, I don't think NC State is. Don't want to, dog on them like that. But um, yeah, I think that's one thing I'll be definitely looking out to see, is if how NC State responds to those trips looks that Virginia like to call week one.
Yeah, Virginia. The other thing you got to watch out with for them, special teams. They had a 100-yard
Oh,
return for
yeah.
touchdown. That was Cam Ross, so he finished with 224 all-purpose yards. So that was an example of pretty poor tackling from Coastal. He just absolutely weaved through that defense. So that's something you got to watch out for. I thought NC State's special teams was solid for the most part in the ECU game, but this is certainly a step up. I think in summary, we sort of diagnosed for you that this offense is probably, the ceiling might be a little higher than ECU just because it's a better conference team. It's a high, there's just better athletes probably. We won't know until we see ourselves, but that's just my inkling, and I think Dan agrees with me there.
Yeah.
And then also that the quarterback is a major wild card in this game, and we're gonna have to wait and see how he handles things. And this team is at risk of becoming very one-dimensional, and that could be something that NC State could really do some work on. But I think those are kind of the main points. Dan, do you think I missed anything?
I think you didn't miss anything. I just want to add that I think for Morris, we've already mentioned how he's dual threat. I think this is a big test for this defense. And if they seem to struggle, you got mobile quarterbacks like Darian Mensah can definitely run the ball.
You got mobile
H
quarterbacks the rest of the way.
Haynes King. I mean, like if you struggle against, no disrespect to Chandler Morris, but if you struggle against Chandler Morris, like down the road, it's not going to be looking good. So
Yeah,
that's just
they
something that I'm, looking
they have
at.
an interesting balance of, you got your traditional pocket passers like Carson Beck and Eli
Yeah.
Holstein on the schedule, and then you have like the complete opposite in Castellanos, Haynes King,
Even CJ
Mensa,
Carr a little bit. CJ Carr a
CJ,
little bit was kind of like that, but
yeah, yeah, we'll
like
see how I kind of want to wait
it's
and
one
see
game. Yeah,
what
it's
that
one game.
offense looks like over time because I think they're going to pound the rock way more than they did against Miami. But a lot of interesting looks are coming NC State's way, and I think this is a good sort of trial period against an offense coached by a guy who has coached some of the best offenses in the country, and Tony Elliott. It just hasn't translated to his head coaching role yet, and a lot of that is because he had to completely rebuild this program more or less. So we'll see how his team looks against Dave Doran here on Saturday. That kickoff is at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific time. If you are listening from where Dan is in California, I'm sure not many of you are, but if you are, that's when kickoff is. We'll be up and ready to go. I'll be in the stadium. Dan will be helping from
In this
afar
chair. He will
in
be
his
in this chair.
chair, breaking things down as they happen for you, and we'll have tremendous coverage of that game. And I'll finish up our preview series just with some predictions on Friday that'll come out on Saturday. So feel free to tune in for those. As always, thanks for watching this episode, and please follow our social media platforms for more if you want more content. You can find Dan on X at Daniel_Rios72. You can find me on X at Senate Tucker. You can find the website on X at Wolfpack on SI. You can find more of these episodes on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. And you can also follow the NC State Wolfpack on SI Facebook page for more NC State content. A lot of great stuff coming down the pipe, loaded schedule. It's going to be a great football season. We'll keep it rolling for you right here at NC State on SI. As always, thanks for tuning in.